Okay, hi, my name's Dean Jefferys, and today I'm interviewing an old friend and from about 35 years ago, Michael Rhodes. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Dean. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's great to come and visit your house and see your beautiful garden. Now, just a little background of this. I'm doing this interview for a documentary I'm making called The Toad, the Whale, the Sun. And Michael has been communicating with nature for most of his life, and is also an author and a spiritual teacher. So good to see you again, Michael.
We've been doing different things in all those 35 years.
Yeah, I know. Yes, yes, different forms of connecting and being active with nature.
Do they know that you're the mad paint bomber on the nuclear warship?
That may come out somewhere along the line. That's about how long since we've known each other, isn't it? 1985.
Yeah.
So
yeah, goes back to the early 80s.
Back in the Bellingen days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, long time.
Yeah. So you've been on quite a journey communicating with nature, and it's one of my passions as well. Spending a lot of time with the whales and deepening my connection. So that's one reason why I'm here talking to you, is to learn more about how to communicate with nature. So if we can start off with that, like, what is there a process, or how does one communicate deeply with nature?
Boy, have you got 2 days?
Yeah, I know it's
okay. For me, this probably started when I was 6. My father bought 12 tomato plants. He gave me 6, and he kept 6 for himself, and we put them all together. And after about a month, his looked twice as big as mine. And I was sort of really tearful about this at 6 years old. What was I doing wrong? And Dad was looking at the tomato plants. He said, I can't understand why yours are not growing. I said, I can't. I dig them up every day and look at the roots, and they don't grow at all. And so then he told me, you put your tomato plants in and you trust. You don't need to keep looking at the roots. You just trust they'll grow. And that was one of the key words, trust. And as a child, I really didn't like people. And so I turned to nature, and I was out in the country, and beautiful countryside, and I turned to nature and I found comfort there. And it seemed to me nature never lied to me. And without really knowing the process, I found that I was talking to nature in my own thoughts. And there was a time when I began to be aware that nature was communicating back to me with my own thoughts. But they were thoughts that I had never thought. I wasn't the thinker. And thoughts also that held things I didn't know. But when you're that young, you don't question that. Everybody does this, don't they? It was years before I realized everybody didn't do that. And so I began to play with this and communicate with various things, and I found there was no limit to it. And I didn't understand it, and that's another key. Adults try to understand. Your listeners will probably try to understand, or viewers, and you can't understand it. It's not understandable. So that when you're trusting, you don't trust what you can understand, you trust far beyond your understanding. And if you have enough trust, then you reach a point of directly knowing, which completely transcends understanding. Our whole education system is based on developing the intellect. Your intellect does not listen to nature. That's your conscious intelligence. That comes from a much deeper place. And so one of the, if anybody wants to know, I would say one of the abilities to develop is the ability to listen. And nobody listens. Possibly you're listening now, but I wouldn't be surprised you're also thinking. And if you're thinking, then you're hearing me, but you're not listening. And if you're listening, you cannot think. You can only think your way out of the moment. You can't think your way into it. Nothing in nature thinks. No matter what we think about the thoughts of dogs and cats, they are not thinking. They're in the moment immediately with a knowing, a conscious intelligence. And so therefore, and one other factor we're bringing right now, the subconscious. All nature is fully conscious. I don't mean fully enlightened or anything like that, but it's conscious in the moment because it can't think its way out of it. And so 94% of humanity is speculated, it's lived subconsciously. So you cannot communicate subconsciously with a conscious species. And so therefore you have to listen. Now if you learn to listen, it only took me just over 5 years, and I really put some hours in on it. When you're really listening, then you're conscious. You cannot listen subconsciously. You can hear subconsciously. That's how all our hearing pretty well, but you can't listen fully conscious. Sorry, you can't. You can only listen when you're fully conscious, because you're not thinking, therefore you're in the moment. Is that a good start for you?
Yeah, no, that's great. So the left brain is like the thinker, the sort of wanting to calculate everything, and the right brain is more present.
Leave the left brain at home.
Yeah.
If you're going out to communicate with nature, lay it on the pillow and say, you just lay there and think, because I don't need you.
Yeah.
And so yes, you're right. The left brain is the intellect, and it's a wonderful thing, the intellect, but it's no good for listening to nature. You've got to go to a much deeper level.
Because I've been out with the whales and listening to the songs of the whales, and when I find I can communicate with them better when I'm not thinking. I'm just fully listening to the whales, and that's when I can just surrender to not thinking, but just totally listening.
That is part of the process. You surrender to it. Like there's not you and a whale, there is one. All energy is one. All nature is one energy, all humanity is one energy, and all that energy is the same energy. And so once you get the idea, I'm here, the tree's there, the whale is there, I've got to communicate across to that, then you're into separation. And you've got to be embrace oneness. So when you're listening, when you get out of your head, you can listen to the whales. And if you're listening to them, your thoughts that you normally project, when you're not projecting that same arena of ability to think becomes a receptor, and so it's as though your thoughts are flowing into you, but you're not the thinker. And you can do that to a remarkable degree, but you've got to get your brain out the way, and most people are unable to do that because the education system puts you right in your left brain.
So what I find also is that I'll be communicating with them, and I'll feel like I'm getting messages coming back from them, an acknowledgement of myself, but then my left brain will come in and says, no, you can't possibly be hearing messages coming from the whales, and then I'll start doubting myself. But so it's
I've
trust
been there,
again.
done that. Trust me, I've done that. I did too many years of that. But no, that's where trust comes in. You just trust. You realise, no, this is communication, this flow of communication. It's not like some cosmic voices go to come out, I am a whale, hello Dean, we're communicating. You're not going to get that comfort. And so the first thing, oh, this is my mind, it's going nuts. And so you get into that place and you annihilate it. And a lot of people give up. They just think it's their mind. Never mind the fact that they don't have one. Mind is universal.
So I guess that's developing your own intuition as well.
Intuition is a whole nother thing. That very much involves a whole brain, the pineal, and pretty much an open heart. And the more you do that, I mean, women are more intuitive than men, but then women have a higher frequency and they're more inclined to use that intuition. Men are far more pragmatic, so if they get an intuitive idea, they get pragmatic about it, and gradually your intuition fades away because you never take any notice of it. Again, if you trust your intuition, then it develops. It's like a muscle being used. I've lived intuitively my whole life. I've never followed logic or reason, and I don't think you have, quite honestly, a lot of your life. Otherwise you wouldn't have risked being shot down. But anyway, yes, intuition has to be used but acted upon. It has to be acted upon, and then it keeps developing. And that's very much a development of the pineal, which in our modern times is not developing. It was way bigger in the Paleolithic times. It's now shrinking rapidly, which is not good.
So tell us a little bit about the importance of the pineal and also having a clean chakra energy system.
Well, you know, we've got all the chakras from the base to the 12th chakra, and most people are unaware of them, and those who are just don't even think about it. I always recommend just moving through the chakras almost on a daily basis, and you can only do that consciously. Subconsciously you won't do it. And so as you move through them consciously, actually you strengthen them, and you, as they strengthen, so you grow yourself. So it's a process of self-growth. And as you go through those chakras, you become more clear, your frequency lifts. Now, if you are a person who's taken the trouble to develop, you've certainly got the open heart. I love an activist who's not angry, but simply acts. And so if you've got an open heart, if your whole brain, in other words, learn to balance the two hemispheres, about 82% of humanity is left brain dominant. Some of those are so dominant that runs their whole life. They tend to be closed, they will argue the point, they're right, everybody else is wrong. And okay, that's extreme, but there are many in that area, and that's not good. So you're certainly not going to communicate with nature, there's no chance of it. And so you have an open mind, you have a balanced brain, and then you have trusted your intuition for a long time, which develops a pineal. As you know, I teach people how to balance the brain and stimulate the pineal. So when you have these in action, there's an incredible flow of intuition. It's like, they call that in a way mystical cognition. I call it direct knowing, because your intuition can become so powerful, somebody can ask me a question that I don't know the answer, and I just pause for a moment and it just flows in. My intuition knows, because my intuition is in connection with universal wisdom. So is everybody's, but you've got to use it. And wisdom is not personal. As soon as you've developed wisdom, and it's like it's an energy that becomes universal, in as much as all humanity can tap into that wisdom. But you know, there are things that we don't do. We're too busy with the left brain. Trying to understand, this need to understand, which is a serious hurdle. So intuition can be developed, but it is that combination. It's not like the third eye. The third eye is actually, you go straight through to between the two hemispheres of the brain. There's the pineal. And so the pineal is for inward seeing. It's insight, intuition, the inner tutor. Tuition from the inner, and insight, and when it's developed, I mean, you can see on the other side of the mountain. You know, where your physical eyes can't go, you can see behind that mountain, but you've got to have a lot of trust. And when you go behind the mountain, you look and you smile, you think, oh my God, I did it. And that's possible, but people just don't even think that way.
Okay, so while we're on the whale subject,
which I know nothing about.
Well, I'm just wondering whether you, in any communications or feelings with the whales, if you feel the whales have any specific role here on the planet.
I think the whales are the greatest communicators with our solar system there is on the planet. Dolphins do it as well, but nothing can do it like a whale. And when I'm deeply into metaphysics, and on a metaphysical level, I'm very aware that the whales communicate right through our solar system and beyond. But on a metaphysical level, the solar system is not all those vast space away. So people say, well, how can sound travel across those spaces? But it doesn't work like that on a metaphysical level. We see the physical universe, we don't see, or some of it, we don't see the metaphysical. We can do, but the people don't. And so your whole perspective from a three-dimensional reality is completely different from a metaphysical reality, which is a far greater reality. Now, I once communicated with a beached whale. I was with others doing our best to get it back in. We didn't have a chance, it probably weighed 40 tons. And so we were throwing buckets of water all over it. And it was freezing cold. It was early in the morning. The wind came off the ocean. God, I was frozen. And I said to the whale, I've had enough. I said, we're not going to be able to do anything here. We can't do anything with you, but we can keep you company as you die. And the whale communicated, it appreciated that, but it said, I have no relationship with death. I am not this beached body. I am free spirit. And as whales swim in the ocean, I swim with them. So I'm not locked in this body the way you seem to all believe that you are. And so this body will die, but there's no grief or sorrow in us whales, because we are not the body. We are so aware of that. And so beaching has happened through forever, since we've been in the oceans. And although there's more taking place now, we also don't want to particularly be in the vibration or the frequency that humanity is creating. So many of us choose to move out. Now that might appear to be accident, water pollution and all sorts of reasons, but the simple fact is that where you emote over us as we beach and do your best to save us, which is hugely appreciated, that's more for your benefit than ours.
That's funny. I had the same feeling once when I coming out of a toad ceremony, was the whales going, well, I actually, wanted to beach, and sometimes there seems like there's some group beachings as well. Some are caused by sonar and mining testing, but also some seems like it's a group ascension process where they all go in.
Well, what you've got to realise is nothing is by accident, nothing by chance. That's all life. And a lot of people can't accept that because, I was involved in an accident a year ago. They weren't involved in an accident, they were involved in a collision of purpose. And so you can't have whales beaching by accident. So although the sonar are there and various things that can completely confuse them, and they beach, even that is not by accident. Everything works by design. As a great man said many years ago, not a sparrow falls. And so not a sparrow can fall by accident or unnoticed. The ripple of energy from that sparrow affects all life. And I really got it, because I stood there looking at this whale and 100 people trying to save it. 100 people working themselves into exhaustion, shivering, stand there shivering, and yet they cared so much about that whale. I said to the whale, this is a wonderful thing you're doing. What a wonderful thing you're doing. I said to the whale, 100 years ago, we would be down here with knives cutting you up. 150 years ago, you'd be cut up and shared as food. And here, everybody is trying to save you. And when the whale and in that communication is, like I said, it's so much of it is for us to develop our compassion for some other creatures. And the way we treat ourselves is not good. And so we've got to learn compassion some way.
Okay, so on the whales and the metaphysical level again, because this really intrigues me, you say that they broadcast and receive information from the metaphysical universe?
Actually, no.
No.
It's not so much they're broadcasting information and receiving it. They're singing a song of connection. Singing a song of connection that goes far, far beyond anything we do. The whale doesn't see itself as alone. Dolphins and whales can have more than one, shall we say, whale or dolphin soul to a physical body. We can't do that. You get insanity. Might take a few years, but it will come as sure as anything. When we say someone has a so-called entity, which is a tortured soul almost, and we can't handle that. But whales and dolphins, so they don't know what isolation is in the way that we know what isolation is. If you isolate a human being and really truly isolate them, in about 2 years they have a mental breakdown completely. But whales or dolphins don't do that. They can, I wouldn't say thrive, because they love company, but they're not alone as such. And so the communication of a whale out into the cosmos is completely non-human. So our thoughts can't follow and logically decipher that type of communication. But it's a communication of love, and I use the word deliberately. It's a communication of connection, and it's a communication of, I wouldn't say hope, but it's a communication that holds a message of the consciousness of life on Earth. It's expressing like humanity is locked in a cry for help, because we're really not doing too well. And part of that cry for help goes into the whale song. because they don't feel that they're a separate species from humanity. They're far more aware. There's no intellectual process taking place, but they have a deeper awareness of their place in the cosmos. We seem to have no awareness of it, except trying to get on the moon or on Mars. And that's, like, to us, a great achievement. Metaphysically, you can be there in the blink of an eye. You don't need all that dressing. But then we're not ready to take on our metaphysicality. You know, the metaphysical always precedes the physical. So we see ourselves on the physical world as physical beings. That's completely wrong. We're metaphysical beings with, expressing through a physical body.
So the whales, they're living both in the physical body and in the metaphysical world. And when they're singing their songs, that song is like a vibration that is
the song
going
is
out
a frequency
into the universe.
that is a higher frequency, and because it's such a high frequency, no matter how deep the sound might be to our ears, the frequency of their energy is like a spotlight cutting through time, as it were, and there is no time on a metaphysical level. All time occupies the same moment, and that's where they sing into that moment. And so everything is there. All eternity occupies the same moment. And that's really difficult to get the left brain around. In fact, it never does get around there. It tries to understand, and what it understands is not what is happening. And so the whales are unique and very necessary. It's like they're sharing our planet on a level of perception that we haven't a clue of. And that's... I wouldn't say it's their job, because I don't like that word, but it's something they do with enormous joy and enormous love.
So the song is going into the ocean. I know it spreads really well because I listen to it over the hydrophone. That's the physical sound. Yeah. That's
the physical sound.
Yeah.
Because that's where it comes from. But that's, you know, sound is also metaphysical. Out in space they say there is no sound. Well, there is a frequency, but it might. The human ear certainly couldn't pick it up, and many computers couldn't pick it up. That's the frequency they live on. And see, us, we know ourselves. Let's just say you're aware you're a spiritual being. That spiritual is your metaphysical. Now, I say you're a slight exception to this, but an average person is 99% of their life is focused in the physical, and way less than 1% is focused in being spiritual. I've improved that to maybe 60% physical, 40% metaphysical. A whale lives very differently, would live at least 50% of its awareness and its relationship with life is metaphysical, and the other 50% would be physical. We only see the physical. So we document their habits and what they do. And yes, that's what the vehicle of the whale energy does. But that's not the whale. And when you're trying to save them, that's not the whale you're trying to save, because the whale is not in jeopardy. But it's good for us.
So it exists in a metaphysical reality as well as
Absolutely.
Can you explain to the layman what the metaphysical reality is?
Well, I'll do it in this way. We look at a tree, the tree's behind me. We look at a tree and we see a physical reflection from a greater metaphysical reality. But for us, the tree is the tree. There isn't anything else because we can't see it. So let's just say everything is energy. And in that energy, all energy is one. And we have our 5 physical senses, and some people have the 6 intuitive sense. But we see less than 1% of what is around us. What we don't see is metaphysical. In other words, metaphysical means beyond the physical. It has a higher frequency. We don't see nature spirits, but they're here. But they're on a higher frequency. There would be no nature on this planet. There would be no plants, no jungles, nothing, without those nature spirits, which we're inclined to call fairies. But then we see a Walt Disney fairy. And that's not what they are. Sorry, but Walt Disney, he may have seen them, but he certainly depicted them in a different way. And so they're in and out of a three-dimensional reality in a flicker of, in a micro moment, in and out, in and out, in and out. But then, physically, we're in and out. Now the eye can't follow it, but physics, quantum physics will tell you, and something like, I can't remember the number, so I won't guess at it, but something like 50 or 60 times a second, or a half second, we're flashing in and out of this reality because of the energy, but we don't see that, so we just see the continuity of physicality. So metaphysical means beyond the physical, and therefore everything, every physical thing on this planet is a reflection and a vehicle of a greater metaphysical reality, and every human being is. And so humans live in their own personal reality. To stop them going insane, we create a consensus reality where everybody agrees to the same thing. And so an agreement will be the past is finished, you can't change it. That would be a common agreement. Wrong. The past is not finished and you can change it. And I teach people how to do that at every intensive. And we do change it. Many times, life-shaking. I wouldn't be sitting here now if I hadn't changed my past. And we're talking 4 lifetimes ago. But for a lot of people, you're only born, you only live once, and life's short. And so they're living an illusion all the way through their life. I'll give them that. You do only live once, but it's called eternal. We're immortal beings, and it's not short. It goes on for a very, very long time until we've eventually left being humanity. In other words, everybody knows we're souls, pretty much, but they all think we're human souls. We're souls having a human experience, which has nothing to do with whales, so I'll move away from that.
So I guess one of the challenges that humans have in this lifetime is to have an expression of all different levels of existence, you know, and one of them, I guess, is the metaphysical reality. And there's various practices that one can do to me, experience that.
Nature, what is life about is about the growth of consciousness. That's what life is on this planet, the growth of consciousness. And to me, nature is the natural evolution. I meant evolution. Nature is a natural evolution of consciousness. We on this planet are the creative evolution of consciousness. Now, if we fitted in with the nature, it would be an incredible blend of energy, and we would put our creative energy into their natural expressions, and everything on this planet would thrive and flourish. But we don't do that. We create our own environments. We don't blend in with nature. We did once. The Aboriginals did, and the Native American Indians did, and so on. But as we've come along and set up our cities, we've created something entirely unnatural. So we have lost our connection with the earth and with nature. And the more subconscious we become, the deeper that disconnection has become. So you can walk into a room that's wired for electricity with lights in it. How long would you need to sit and meditate and chant to get lights to come on? A very long time. It would be so much easier to just get up and walk over to the switch and switch it on. Well, we seem to have forgotten that, and so we take the long way around everything. And you know, I at 35 decided I knew nothing. I didn't know who I am or why I am, where I'd come from or where I'm going. I don't mean a biological process. That bothered me, and you knew me about this time. And so I decided I want to know. And that for me was more important than income and all the things that people consider important. All gets left behind. So everything I've gained, and you've listened to me for 3 days, all that goes with me. That's what I call treasure. Not houses and money, vast amount of money in the bank. Useless stuff, you leave it behind. Very nice for the next generation, but you can't take it with you. Wisdom and intelligence says, I want to take with me everything I can. You take with you the evolution of your own consciousness. And so we're the creative evolution of consciousness. And we could learn so much from whales, but then we can't because we're so separate from them. We can't hear what they're talking about, except people like you who are developing it. And there's plenty of those people. You know, they're increasing in numbers, but we have a long way to go. I include myself in that. I consider Anna Breitenbach a far better interspecies communicator than myself, because I took on a more tough one. I took on humanity to communicate with that. And like Spirit the leopard never says, yeah, but. Oh, I don't understand. What are you talking about? Never says that. It knows.
Yeah.
because
Doesn't have that left brain.
you communicate with that level.
Mm.
And but people, they're difficult. And they'll come up to you after a talk. You know, when you said such and such, I never said it. Never got close to it. But they had this idea in their head, and I'm there. They came there for me to confirm what they think they know.
Mm.
And when I don't, then they'll imagine I did. And they'll say, do you know? And I said, sorry, I didn't say that. And, oh yes, you did. And their companion will often say, actually no, he didn't. And I thought, I think to myself, the games people play.
So you're talking about you know, our evolution on this planet at the moment. It seems like we're coming to a fairly critical stage in human evolution.
You have no idea.
Can you tell me a little bit about the ages that we're gone through and what we're facing at the moment?
Anthropology says we've been around for 200,000 years. Actually, we've been around millions. We've been around millions, but we live in 200,000 year cycles. There's no reason it has to be 200,000 years, but at the end of every 200,000 years, we've completely lost the plot. We haven't a clue what we are, what we're doing, why we're here, or anything. And so it's like there's a earth shift, and sometimes a very serious earth shift, and we come back and start another cycle. So we're now at the end of the 5th cycle. That's how I perceive it. So this is the end of 1 million years of human growth, and you know, we're heavily in denial. If, for instance, we find a skeleton of a giant, it's stuck away in the Smithsonian Institute down the cellars, it doesn't exist. And if we do, now they've got the perfect answer, it's a hoax. If they can't get hold of it, it's in Greece, for instance, oh, it's a hoax. Everybody believes it's a hoax, because they're so indoctrinated with scams and hoax and everything. So if the truth hits a person in the face, much easier to say it's a hoax because it doesn't fit in with my religion or my beliefs. And people hold on to their beliefs like a limpet to a rock. And, you know, we don't grow. And so actually, and I'll say this without any hesitation, in the last 200,000 years, the evolution of consciousness through nature has been moving very nicely. But the evolution of consciousness and humanity has gone into an intellectual, subconscious, dead-end road. And the intellect, I'm not knocking it, it's a brilliant tool, but that's what it is, it's a tool. It's an absolute tool. And yet today, most people's lives are completely run by their subconscious program and their intellect. And so they don't evolve. They're not bad or wrong. There's no reprimand, there's no whack from heaven. It's just, if you do year 4, and at the end of it you haven't grown or learned anything, then you've got to do year 4 again. In this case, it's like the classroom is full of people, and just one in year 4 will go on to year 5. The others have to do year 4 again. We're now on the 5th time, let's say, doing year 4. And so these cycles, and there are cycles within cycles, are very, very real, but it's not a 200,000 year cycle that we have. We create that because somewhere around that stage, and you know, it could be 1,000 or a year, 2 different years difference, somewhere around that stage we lose the plot. And now we're approaching, literally to me, a pandemic of dementia. And when you have a new case of dementia in the Western world, about every 4.5 seconds there's a new case. When we have 10 a second, we'll be right, or 5 a second, we'll be right in a pandemic, and it's rapidly moving in that direction. And any futurist who studies anthropology and the future of humans can see that so clearly. And so we're an immortal species. And when you come to a point where you're no longer growing in consciousness, you're no longer helping consciousness evolve, then you've got to start again. And so, to me, much of the population will move into the 6th cycle, not as punishment, simply have to do the grade again. But there'll be millions who will move on into a completely different future. Because people don't, I mean, this is getting into a big subject, but all time occupies the same moment, and there are so many frequencies of Earth. And so in the space we're in, there are thousands of frequencies of completely different action. We see 1%. And you hear people say, if I can't see it, I don't believe it. Well, how's that for a person who's not going to grow any more in that life? They're finished. You know, they might as well stand in front of a speeding car because they're done. Okay, they can share their life, but they're not growing anymore in consciousness. And that's what we're about. We are the creative evolution of consciousness on this planet, and will continue to be. But we have to have, for instance, you get a vast bushfire over here, and towns are burnt, and they interview people and watch it on camera. So what are you going to do now? Oh, I just want my old life back. Floods, I just want my old life back. Japanese tsunami, I just want my old life back. Everywhere in the world, I just want my old life back. Doesn't matter if it's fire or floods, I just want my old life back. In other words, I don't intend to grow out of this.
Yeah,
I'm not going to change anything.
Yeah.
And so let's continue, you can do it again. I'll still be here because I'm tough and I can endure. Ridiculous.
So does that mean sort of existence is forcing a new age on us because we're not getting the message? And what does that new age look like, or the end of this cycle?
Well, you heard my little metaphor. Do you want to hear that again?
About
My little metaphor with the hollow planet out in the universe. I'll keep it quick. It's got a moon orbiting in an eccentric orbit, and the planet is completely hollow. Now, people don't realise this, but everything you do, everything you think, all your emotions are universal. They don't stop with you. You're creating energy, and it keeps going. It just keeps going because all energy is one. So the energy you feel, the universe feels, because all energy is one. And the frequency of humanity is dropping quite rapidly. That is scary stuff. We affect the planet, we affect the weather. People don't get this. If we were self-loving species, our climate change would be so positive for us. But we're almost a self-hating species, collectively. There are many who, of course, are not. But the mass consciousness has a very low relationship with itself. So therefore, as we're the creators, the climate change we create will be negative to us. Now, people say, rubbish, that doesn't work that way. That's exactly the way it works. We are the creators on this planet. And so, therefore, this ripples out through the universe. We're universal beings. Everybody thinks the universe is vast, vast, vast space. There are millions of universes, billions of them. And this is just one, and we are a universal being in this. It's a multiverse out there, a multiverse of multiverses. The vastness of life is incomprehensible to us because we're stuck with our little 1% of what is here anyway. And so the discordant energy radiates out through the universe. That moon's going around the hollow planet becomes more eccentric and clips the side of the planet, and a sound comes out like a sound. This is a metaphor, and this sound is like a wave of energy, because that's what sound is. It's a wave of energy. It follows a similar principle to a tsunami, but completely different physics. There's no floor to push the waves up. So the waves of sound grow exponentially as they travel, create a bow wave, and a bow wave creates a bow wave. And quite a number of them. One went through in the 1960s. Suddenly humans are acting in a different way. Suddenly songs are being written and sung that are talking of love and change, and John Lennon and Paul McCartney and those sort of people, and many others. It was different, and it gradually faded away. And then in 1987, when we had what they call a planetary line-up, the human frequency lifted, and then down it went again. In 2012, when we're expecting everything, probably the last of the bow waves hit us. And suddenly the frequency lifted, but humanity's stuck with a tiny pineal, and the pineal is the interface between the physical and the metaphysical. So with a pineal going down, shrinking, so dementia increases. And as a pineal, we weren't able to respond. Nature did. And so much of so-called extinction, there's no such thing as extinction, but there is nature moving out of our frame of reality, because we only see less than the 1%. It does move out of our frame of reality. It responded to this frequency, and for many animals and birds and insects, it wasn't appropriate to be here. What is all nature? Consciousness draws to itself physical form through which to express. but the expression is consciousness. We get hooked in the physical, but the physical form is there for consciousness to express through, and that applies to all nature and all humanity. And so that in 2012 the nature responded, but humans, many individuals, millions of individuals responded. But you know, we're 6.7 billion people on this planet, and the overall mass of humanity didn't respond too well. We've got a march fly wants a meal, and they bite, and so it didn't respond. We haven't responded well. I mean, you've responded, I've responded, and many people you know, and people we mix with have responded, but that's still a tiny, tiny percentage of humanity. This is what Ascension's about. You know, a lifting state of consciousness ascends out of the lifts, the frequency lifts beyond the dense vibration. And so this is the greatest opportunity. There are more souls coming in now than probably there've ever been. They're flooding in. You know, let me get in that queue. I want to get to the front. Let me get there. They're not concerned about whether they'll retain their body for long. The energy and the frequency on this planet is in a place of dynamic, explosive growth. And every human being is being polarized. And they'll either move towards survival and prepare for something. They'll either move toward hoarding more money. They'll move toward they'll move toward aggression. Some will move toward anger. Others will criticize governments and go that direction. And others will choose love. And they will go that direction. They will choose love. And this is what all my intentions are about. Choosing love. All about unconditional love. Because that's the most misunderstood subject of all. Love.
Do you think whales have a role in that? Because whenever I'm around a whale, I feel like they're open heart and they're an expression of unconditional love, and I feel like just sort of nearly brings me to tears when I come in close
That's your
contact with
emotions.
them. Yeah.
That's your emotions.
Okay, yes.
That's okay.
I'm
But
attached
yes,
to it.
they are involved in that because it's not like this is our planet. And whales are when we've done all the biology of a whale, that's not what a whale is. And so whales, when they put their energy in, as they express their energy, that blends with all other energy, including human energy, and helps, if anything, to maintain the frequency. But we're good. We can beat it down. You know, let's put somebody like Trump in and beat it down and really all get upset. You know, the fact that there's a wall being built between two races, you know, that in itself, they took the Berlin Wall down, didn't they, learn?
Yeah.
I mean, that in itself is an act against humanity.
Creates more separation.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
And it's an aggressive act.
Yeah. So I'm curious to think, like, if we're coming to the end of a cycle, you know, what that looks like, and if there's a chance that humanity can affect that transition by, you know, incorporating more love, or whether we're actually, you know, it's fairly inevitable that there's going to be like mass calamities going on and possibly, you know, population dive big time.
Well, you'll have to hang on to the fact that you've probably had 10 to 50,000 bodies. This is just one of them, and you're still around. And this body is a rather good one you chose, big strong body. And but you are an immortal being, and every human being is immortal. But we generate and create fear. And so we fear such things. What would be the most terrifying prospect was that nothing will happen and will continue with more of the same. And they put the program of human history, human philosophy, human beliefs, a deeply involved program into many computers, and not one computer comes up with an extrapolation of the movement of human consciousness that has us anybody left on the planet by the end of this century. And personally, I don't want to upset people, but I do not see humanity moving more than another 2 to 3 at the maximum decades. We're not talking a long time, we're talking decades. I don't see anybody, you know, in that time we will be in it. We're only just at the beginnings. We're only in the rumblings. We will be right in it. And the fear will create its own reality. I'll just say this isn't a spiritual thing, but I'll just say it. In every moment of your life, you are creating the content and the direction of every moment of your life. That applies to everyone. So it doesn't matter what is going on, we're the creators of our life. That's what it means to be creative. And if somebody wants to avoid that, it's not about the physical, it's about, yes, choosing love, choosing a path of compassion and open-hearted and love. And many will find that comfortable and will do that. Many will seek survival because fear is the dominant pattern in the subconscious program. Fear is dominant. And yet fear doesn't exist. However you perceive God, God did not create fear, we did that. And we discussed this. In nature, there is no such thing as human fear. Their fear is a completely different experience than ours, and it's far more stress than it is fear. I didn't know it'd grow half that size. Percrea salua marginata. God, that's big. Wrong place of anything that size.
Pointy ends too.
I mean, we, as far as us, we cut every connection off. You know, even sunglasses. You know, the rods and cones that go into your eyes are actually brain material. It's not there of a different material, it's actually brain material. And so when you put sunglasses on, you cut off the sun's energy to your brain. And then if it comes in sideways, the pupil is dilated because you've got sunglasses on, and so the sun comes in at the side of your glasses, and that's then harmful to you because you've dilated your eye. Instead of having it shrink to a pinpoint, you've got it, but the sunglasses have opened it up. And so there's no common sense involved. We do it all wrong. We just don't have a clue. But you get a huge tree. Every tree is, you know, they're covered in leaves, obviously, and those leaves have a relationship with the sun. Now, if you get in one of those leaves, you'll hear it sounding rather like rain on a tin roof, like whales calling, like wolves howling, all the natural sounds, if you're inside that leaf, you can hear simply from the sun. So when I did this, I realized, and it took me some time afterwards to realize, I realized that the sun has a relationship with all life, and what the life experiences of the sun is the wholeness of life on earth, and not just its own personal experience, because there's no personal in nature. It really doesn't exist, even though the higher animals can display what we see as personal characters. Nevertheless, a personal doesn't exist in nature. And so obviously the nature, when you're inside a leaf, fascinatedly listening, and when you're inside a leaf, let me assure you, you're not only metaphysical, you're minute, but you can do that. You can shrink yourself down to the size of a microorganism. If you need to have the body, I don't need that anymore. But and so you're listening to the sound of the sun, and it comes to you. This is totally holistic. You're listening through the sun, you're listening to the sounds of earth, and through a leaf. And the leaf is not saying, you get that? Did you hear that, wolf? It's not doing anything like that. The leaf is a receptor. And in the leaf, the sun penetrates into the leaf. Now, it penetrates to a degree physically via photosynthesis and a whole lot of chemical reactions. But on a higher frequency completely, the leaf is filled with, let's say, millions of nature spirits, which are if you've got a piece of paper and pricked it with a pin, the indentation would be bigger than the size of these nature spirits. And there's in and out of reality the whole time. But there's so many, they carry the energy of the sun and the illumination of the sun right through the leaf. They carry it down the twigs. There's not an instrument on a planet that could record this. They carry it down through the stem, into the twigs, through the twigs, into the slender branches, down those, with actually a change of nature spirit energy. they get slightly more dense as it goes down into the deeper wood. Eventually down the trunk, like a waterfall of energy flowing down constantly. It never ends. Even when the sun goes in, there's still an energetic exchange. So although you don't have the intensity of the sun, there's still an energetic exchange going on. Of course, in winter that ends in a European country, where they're not evergreens, and so that process ends and the whole tree becomes still, as it were. The energy slows down. But on our trees in Australia, so it flows on down, a tidal, just a constant flow of this energy down into the roots, out through the feeder roots that spread around the tree into the biomass, and then down through all the roots, the deeper, deeper, deeper roots, and all the way the illumination of the sun, the energy of the sun is carried right down into the soil profile, maybe 1 kilometre or 2 kilometres down beneath the tree, because the root mass is far greater than what's above ground always. And even though we don't see it, you know, when they come down to hair roots, masses of hair roots, thinner than a human hair, and still the energy flows down. So where the root hairs engage the soil profile and move into the pore space between the particles of soil, the sun energy is carried there. So the earth knows the sun, but then energetically it's carried down and down, rather like now threads of metaphysical energy. We've just left the physical, but the metaphysical is still a powerhouse, and so it reaches down and down and down. And in the big trees, which we need, when we take away the great trees, we take away the sun energy is no longer able to so deeply reach into the earth. So the great trees we have, we badly need them. They didn't become great trees by accident, because a tree thought, well, this is a good idea, I'll do a couple of thousand years. It was because it was necessary and needed. It's still needed, but there's less doing it. But our science knows nothing of this. You know, this is meta-science, and unfortunately that hasn't really got going yet. And so the threads of metaphysical energy carry the illumination of the sun down through the earth, right through the crust of the earth, coal seams, semi-precious minerals, down through caves and lakes, and through satellites, stalactites and stalagmites, eventually down through the crust of the earth, into the magma, through the magma, 50 to 100 kilometers deep, and down into the very core of the earth, which is unbelievably dense, and right down into that. That's the metaphysical energy. So the tree is a conduit between the sun and the earth. Otherwise the centre of the earth can't receive the sun, and it needs that. And when we take away the great trees, we're denying that whole process. We're cutting that process. There's still enough to keep it going, but if ever we've removed all the great trees and we've got nothing but trees for commerce, then we'll be in, well, it won't happen, because the earth would protest, and we wouldn't like the protestations. It's beginning to protest, as it will, but that'll accelerate a lot more. And so that's something of, you know, the magnitude of the sun. It's not just up there. The march flies that buzz around us right now remind me of an incident going back maybe 30 or 40 years. And I was in a rainforest, and there was a march fly, a big one, and he kept buzzing me. And I sort of sat there and closed my eyes and said, "March fly, will you just leave me alone? You know, I don't want you to suck my blood." And immediately there was a flow of communication that came from the consciousness of march flies. And I understand it more today. I have more comprehension of it than I did then. But what it basically said, and this is my words, what it basically said, a march fly cannot make a choice to not bite you. It's what we do. This is our energy. We bite any animal we can to get the blood. This is what we do. And in fact, it's not even possible to have this conversation because I can't make a choice as march fly consciousness. I can't make this choice. So what's happening, this flow of communication, as we energetically connect through the single march fly, you are taking that energy and transforming it into words that you call a communication between us. and only you will know the accuracy of that. But it's stimulated by the flow of energy between us. And as a March fly consciousness, I can't have a conversation with a human, but it's taking place because you have the ability to have a communication with energy of any life form. That's why it's happening. That to me was a revelation. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and that's really what's going on in all of it. Now, a whale is a far higher form of consciousness, and so you could have a communication where there is absolutely input from the whales and dolphins, etc., but not from March flies. And yet, you can have the communication, but then you've got to trust that your translation of the energy, which doesn't have words in it, your translation is correct, and that requires a trust. And without that trust, not much is happening.
Yeah, because when have had communication with the whale, it's sort of it feels like it's been like an emotion or something, and I've had to like translate the emotion into words that I can interpret.
They don't speak in humanese.
Yeah.
We don't speak in whalese.
Yeah.
But the energetic exchange allows both parties to translate that in their own way into terms that has its own meaning. Yeah.
So that process of getting to that point where you can trust, explain to me a couple of the techniques that we can use to get into that
We have
space.
to listen. We have to, and another thing is to take away all our doubt, self-doubt. We're plagued with self-doubt. Have you ever seen a cat with self-doubt? I mean, they just look at you. Me, doubt? What am I doubting? I'm the king around here. And so we're plagued with self-doubt. I mean, I do intensives all over the world, and I listen to people's conversation. It's full of self-doubt. End of story. It's a box. So you've got to get out the box of I believe this, I believe that. That's a box. You're encased in that box. Nature's not in there with you. And so it goes on. Everything that reduces you in any way has to be let go of. In other words, to the average person, they cannot communicate with nature and stay the same. They're going to have to grow and change. Not change for the sake of change, but change as a result of growing in consciousness. Then they find it. When all life is one, we're not really on the outside at all. And nature has many ways of communicating, but our way of metaphysically doing it is a gift for us. But people are in denial of their metaphysical selves.
So do you think it's an important part of the evolution of humanity at this moment to be able to, I guess, sensitize or connect or to being able to communicate with nature? Because it seems like we've...
That's an interesting question, because you'll notice like the North American Indians had an incredible relationship with nature. They were amazed that white men couldn't communicate with the wind and didn't understand the waterfall or the language of the grass and the prairies. It's like, who are these white people who are blind and deaf? But they in turn had not developed their intellect to the degree that we had. And so they had to go through a development, and it's happening with the Aboriginals. They've got to develop the intellect because it's a tool that has an amazing future for us, and then learn to blend that with conscious intelligence. At the moment, very few people are conscious, and you've only got to look at the oceans and the pollution. I mean, what species makes its rivers undrinkable? Where's the intelligence? So a cursory glance shows you that humanity is not using intelligence. And so we had overdeveloped the intellect and had no connection. They had a wonderful connection but hadn't developed the intellect to the degree that is now happening. I don't mean they weren't intellectual, but their potential for their use of their intellect was far greater. And so now we shatter that expression, and now they're developing their intellect. Hopefully that they don't lose their connection with nature. Some have. One or two, I remember Gabu Ted Thomas, and he said you remember him? He said the young people are lost it. He said they're as disconnected as the white people. He said we elders still have it, and I said that is a real shame. Yeah, he was quite an important man at a certain stage of my life.
Yeah, same.
The best is yet to come.
Yeah. So the Aboriginal people are developing more the intellect, and the white people who already have a lot of the intellect developed, needing to, and some are developing their connection
with nature. Yes, that says it very nicely.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's an important part of
absolutely part of the evolution of consciousness.
Yeah.
You know, the potential of a human being is 1,000 times greater than we're using.
So just on the where we're evolving to, and we touched a bit on the cycles before. I guess I'm just thinking about the immediate sort of next 20, 30 years as being fairly critical.
You really don't want to know.
Well, can we direct this by conscious will and people taking on activities to do?
You can only direct your own. Everybody's on their path, and you have. I mean, I simply, when I travel out around the world, I put out an invitation. I'm doing this. If people want to come, they come. If they don't, they don't. So I don't go against anybody's will. I'm their, spiritual teacher by their choice, not by my choice. I simply accept them. And so every person, when we come to the critical times, I mean the Aboriginals for the first time ever are saying we are now in the end of times. And that goes back to the deepest teachings from dream time, which a lot of white people scoff. But it actually has more basis of reality than they realise. A lot of dream time comes out of a greater reality, so it doesn't fit in with modern thinking. And many of the modern Aboriginals don't get it, but the real elders who've carried that energy with them, they get it because it does come out of dream time. Sorry, their dream time was a greater reality. But that's really difficult to explain because a lot of them don't realise that. They think there was a dream time, exactly. They didn't realise that they were in and out of a greater reality. But we'll leave that. And so what we're doing is, as we go into these changes, earth changes, your path is your creation through that. You choose love and to honour life, all life, your path will be a beautiful one. And whatever happens to your body is immaterial. It won't be a painful process. You'll simply leave it because the soul will be able to send out of it without the necessary pain. The soul will know this body's time is finished and it will simply leave it, not through the miserable death process that we create today. It'll be a different process. But you can't do that for anyone else, not your children, your spouse or anything. You can't do that. It's your path is your path, and you're the creator of your path, and you're creating it now. In every moment, your thoughts, your emotional, you can't have a thought without an emotion. It's the motion that's the powerhouse that's creating your future, far more than the thought. And you're doing it now. Everybody's doing it now.
So it's difficult not to have an attachment to, our loved ones dying, or the species, dying, or the trees and the rivers dying.
Well, you know what I'm going to say. There is no death. Yes, no trees die.
So it's more attachment.
No trees die. They simply withdraw. Consciousness draws to itself physical form for which to express. The expression is not physical form. The expression is consciousness, because that's all there is. Everything else is a very smart illusion. And I know if you bang your head on a tree trunk, and you'll say, well, that's a tough illusion. But nevertheless, that is not the real world. That's what that really means. And so nothing loses its life. And yes, where you have an attachment, you do not have unconditional love. Love cannot attach or be attached to.
Okay. So when I feel attached...
Fear attaches. That's not so good, is it?
No. So, I recognise that I have an attachment to relieve... I hear myself saying suffering of the dolphins when they're herded into like Taiji and killed and put into entertainment facilities and whatever, and I would prefer them to be able to swim free.
But does it ever occur to you that maybe the dolphins also have chosen this?
That to die or to be in
no,
entertainment?
Whatever happens, it's part of their journey of life. You see, we take on the view we're the superior life form, so therefore we know what is best for everything, the elephants and everything, and whales and dolphins. We know what's best. Now, what you do, to me, what I love about you people, you are a long, sharp pin up the backside of apathy, and apathy is the worst possible energy on the planet. Somebody like you does it with a big heart, with no anger, and you're not cursing the people who do it. You're just disturbed by them. There are others who will hammer nails into trees so that when the guy cuts a chainsaw, his chainsaw breaks and slashes round his face and he's maimed or dead. That's, I mean, what the man with the chainsaw is doing doesn't get close to the man who's murdering people in a horrible way, and yet he thinks he's a wonderful spiritual activist. He's not. He's a callous, fear-ridden, aggressive, angry, hurting, resentful man. He is expressing a nature in that act that is far worse than anybody who's digging mines or chopping down trees or anything like that. He's acting against humanity. Now, this could be a long argument, but when you look at it from the metaphysical side, then his energy is not doing anything for nature, is not saving trees. The energy that cuts down trees is fear. The energy that puts nails in the parks, the trunks of them, is fear.
Same energy. So one message that I received from the whales when I was feeling, I guess, sad that they faced harpoons when they left Harvey Bay.
I feel sad.
Yeah, and I said, what can I do, to help? And they, what I got was like, we love that you're communicating with us like this, and the best thing you can do is be like us and express unconditional love. Yeah.
But see, that's smarter than we are.
Yeah, I mean, and then I still wanted to join the Sea Shepherd boat and go down there and get in front of the harpoons and,
I'm all for Sea Shepherd and all those things. I'm all for them. I just would like it that they all have a similar way of expressing their energy from you, that they leave out the anger, they leave out the rage, they leave out the rage against humanity, because we've got enough of that. The world is full of it. Saving a whale and raging against humanity is a pointless act. And so I agree, go ahead and do your best to save the whales and save the dolphins, but realise in the end that what they're bringing out of you is your compassion, and you're acting on that compassion, and that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and it's hard to...
but you're not, let go of the idea you're saving their lives, because life, physical expression is not the expression of life. That's the expression of the soul that's within that physical body. There's to get a little bit deeper, there is nothing outside of self that is life. You are life. A dolphin is life. You can take away the body, you can take away your body, but you can't take away your life. You continue to live. You just think, okay, well, this is on a metaphysical level, this is interesting. It's like I'm in a different world. You're just on a different frequency.
So when you, like for example, when I feel a dolphin in captivity and having to jump through hoops literally before they get fed, and there's chlorine and everything else, and it feels to me like humans are inflicting suffering on a intelligent sentient being, and that brings up emotions in me. And how best would you suggest to deal with those emotions that I get?
I don't agree that it's happening. I don't agree that we do that with dolphins, etc. But on the other hand, what you've got to realise is that all the children who watch that don't have a condemnation program in their head, and they're connecting with dolphins. The dolphins are aware they're connecting with these children, and those children will grow up to have a very protective energy toward dolphins. and they won't agree with them being killed, and they will change probably all of that. And so every zoo, I've heard a lot of people say zoos are bad, the animals are in prison. In actual fact, the animals are in a situation where they can have where people, particularly children with their education program, can connect with them and feel compassion and love for them. Oh, they're so beautiful. And what's happening is the process of bringing humanity, the next generation, in a deeper connection with nature. And it happens through those ways. And we don't have to approve of it, but something that Karen is always saying, life always gets it right. Now you could put up 1,000 protests and 1,000 arguments and everyone would come out of your intellect. But if life always gets it right, it means metaphysically it's always perfect. Everything is happening, unfolding perfectly. It doesn't have to be this particular unfolding, but this is the way we've created it. In other words, the nature of creation is that however wrong we create it, it will come right. It will be right. Complete paradox. But then Jesus loved paradoxes. Although he told parables, I make people face the paradox. So however wrong you get it, it's right.
Okay, so I just want to touch a little bit on some of my experiences with the toad and see how that compares with your experiences in the metaphysical world, because I understand.
When you're on toad, you're in your metaphysical body.
I guess so.
Absolutely.
I've never really sort of found words.
It's simply shutting down your physical. That's all it's doing.
Yeah. Okay, because what's happened for me is it feels like I've experienced a space that is beyond our normal time and space reality from here. So I don't understand that space, and it seems like you've been.
I don't understand that space. I've experienced it, but nobody understands it.
Okay, but you experience and you can traverse that dimension.
But that's what bothers me with toad. You're under the influence of somebody else or the drug, whereas I'm under nobody's influence and nothing else. I can pick and choose what I experience, where I go.
So you can just go into that metaphysical space at will.
Is this being
whenever
recorded?
You want to. Yes, it is.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I was just thinking this is too good to lose.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't miss this.
Sorry. So I can go, yes. I mean, when you go to sleep at night, you're going to 5 sleep cycles of about 1.5 hours. As you go dip down in the 1.5 hours, you hit REM, rapid eye movement. At that point, your astral body, which is the metaphysical, if you like, leaves your physical body, because it has to do. Otherwise it couldn't survive, because it's not the body. And so it goes out. We call the astral body as if it's something weird that has nothing to do with us. But it's more us than the physical body is. And now long ago thought, well, if you can do that while you're asleep, then why can't you do it while your body's awake? What's the difference? And so I went back to my childhood and looked at what I'd done then and decided I can do this. So I learned to sit down and close my eyes and relax. And you've got to get rid of fear and just allow my metaphysical body to move out. You start that process with conscious imagination. And then you move out into a greater reality. And for years I didn't know, but I had an emotional attachment to time and space. I figured they were there. That's what I'd been taught. But eventually I learned that was just a physicality, and three-dimensionally there is time and space. But metaphysically there's no time and there's no space. And then you say, well, my God, what keeps us all apart? Well, space, but it isn't the space that we see. And it isn't the distance we see.
So what I find it peculiar is when you're in that space, there's an acceptance, but there's still sort of an awareness of the world that you've come from.
Yes, exactly. Very much when you're in astral, your body's not aware of that. It's sound asleep. When you're doing it metaphysically, you're aware of your surroundings. You're aware of sounds around you, but your whole focus has gone. You've moved your consciousness. Your astral projection is moving your consciousness with the astral body when it moves out. So you can actually know what you're doing. They teach it in the Monroe Institute in America. So you're conscious of everything that happens on an astral level. But it's happening every night, whether you're aware of it or not. And that's every average person. It's happening, but they're not aware of it. Well, the metaphysical's the same. When I move out into my metaphysical, it happens because I consciously move my metaphysical out, and I consciously go with it. And yet there's always the physical consciousness that is left, that is having a relationship with around me. But that's probably no more than 5% of my awareness. The rest is in a completely different space. I've even developed it to the point now, I wanted accuracy, that I could sit at my computer and type while I'm metaphysically journeying. Now generally my journeying is more involved than I can type, and so I get there are gaps in it, but when I come back and start to go through what I've written, all those gaps just fill in. It's like the metaphysical memory, which memory is metaphysical, even though in a physical body there is chemistry involved. But the metaphysical memory without the physicality is far, 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 far better than the physical memory, the physicality of memory.
So
you're getting into some deep places now.
Yeah. I mean, it fascinates me because when I go into that space, I feel like I'm directly connected with source energy. And
well, that's the
it's hard
difference.
to put
You
words
always
in.
are, but you're not aware of it.
Yeah.
That takes away you're taking away from yourself your physical blockages. Your sense of isolation and separation just become part of that subconscious program. So you're taking yourself out the physical and out the subconscious program. And with practice, you can simply do that without Toad.
Yeah, it feels like there's this, go into this like non-dual space where there is no separation.
We create duality.
Yeah.
The duality is between identity and self, between physical and metaphysical. We create duality. Basically, I've taken most of that duality away from my life. So when you're doing that, once you've realize you now know your potential, and so, but Toad gives it to you, but you can give that to yourself. So I'm not condemning Toad or any of those drugs, but generally there's a tendency that when you finish using them, you're further back than when you began, because you've developed a dependency.
Yeah,
and you've developed a dependency. Here we have another paradox. The dependency is outside self, yet nothing is outside self, but you've developed a dependency that will take away the mind and body combination. You've taken that away, but you've done it with an agency to do that. You can do that yourself.
And that's one of the reasons why I'm talking to you, because I believe that is possible to get into that space without taking any substance.
Considering I do it regularly, it is possible.
Yeah, well, there you go.
And I've written books on it.
Yeah.
At least 4 or 5 books out there describing my journeys.
Yeah. So a lot of times when I go into this state of non-duality and direct connection with source, which, just putting a name on it is a metaphysical state, how I've had trouble putting words into that and creating
join the club,
a story or a narrative around that experience, and actually being able to physically work in that area. You've been working with that for many years now.
My greatest challenge is when I have these metaphysical experiences is to be able to even write it. I have experiences in consciousness that there are no words for. Imagine this one. I have experiences in consciousness, you might know what I mean, that my intellect can't touch, because the intellect is not capable of touching it. And so those experiences are in me. I can't communicate it to anybody because there's no language for it.
Ineffable.
And the intellect can't even go there. And so the only way it gets shared is energetically. And I don't have to do anything about that because my energy is one with all human energy. And so in fact the experience goes into the human energy even though I've said no words.
So into the human energy.
It's a beneficial experience.
So you're transferring that energy to someone specifically, or
no? Because it's in me, it's in you. It's as simple as that. Now, you'll have no intellectual knowledge of that. You won't feel any different. But because it's in me and it's in you, then it's in everyone. Because there's no separation in humanity. You know, we live separation, but it's all humanity is one energy. And so everything you experience is in the whole human energy.
So as you learn that process, do you feel other people, like when you do your intensive, I mean, you must be teaching hundreds of people every year
I like to
part
think
of this process.
But I don't teach this nature process. Mostly I teach people about life and living.
Yeah.
The metaphysics of life and how it affects everything you do. Nature is something I do occasionally with regards to teaching it.
So to go into this metaphysical world more...
Let me just cut in a moment.
Yeah.
The fact that Anna Breitenbach's DVD with Spirit the Leopard had about 9,000 a million viewers says that there's an enormous upsurge of credibility that says, yes, this is possible. How do we do it? I mean, she became overwhelmed. She had when I spoke to her last, she had 48 invitations to different countries. I said, oh my God, I'm glad I don't have that. I said, this is what comes with fame. You know, and she didn't like it. It's just, she's overwhelmed now. So last year she took the whole year out. You know, she said, I can't deal with this. I said, no.
So she's someone who's accessed the metaphysical world as well and being able to
From what I understand with Anna, she doesn't metaphysically travel. She's just, she communicates. She's got the communication down to perfection. And as she will say, it goes through the imagination. And your imagination has to be completely open to receiving information that you have no idea of. And it moves through an imaginary process and then translates in the mind. And mind is universal. So when we're sure each one of us can use mind, and we call it my mind, but it isn't, it's universal.
So is that different from the way that you receive communication from your bonsais or trees or pen or whatever?
No, I would use that. I mean, sometimes I will go into a tree and that's a whole different experience. But generally I use the same technique, if you like, as Anna, like Anna knows that it's not her and spirit, they're one. And so she allows the energy of spirit to move into her, and that automatically translates, as I said earlier, that automatically translates in a way that makes sense to her, because leopards don't speak English. They don't speak French, come to that, but if you were doing that and you were French, it would come to you in a French way. And so far beyond language, which is is all about separation, as obviously you know, language separates. Telepathy is a universal language, and when I communicate telepathy with other beings out in the solar system and other places that I've had, probably hundreds, it's always telepathically. In fact, they used to say to me, why do you broadcast everything? You know, you're broadcasting to everything. You only need to share your telepathy with me. And I said, well, I don't know any other way. Nobody ever taught me how to do that. Eventually I twigged it and found it. And it said, doesn't it bother you that you broadcast everywhere? I said, no, actually, I'm an open book. I've got nothing to hide. But then people think that telepathy you're sharing with everybody. And that's what I thought. That's what I did. But in fact, telepathy is as personal as communication between us. But telepathy involves the language of emotion, the mental language and images, and puts it into a flow of communication that transcends all language. And it comes through universal mind.
Does one have to be able to access the metaphysical reality to be able to communicate telepathically, and vice versa?
No. But on the other hand, as soon as you do it, you are doing it metaphysically.
So telepathy is
the metaphysical.
Metaphysical,
absolutely.
yeah. Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're able to work with telepathy, then you're using your metaphysical self.
Yeah.
And but your physical brain will be aware of it.
Okay.
And will be able to translate it and stay with the picture.
Yeah.
See, you are a metaphysical being. You're not a body. You're not a brain. Imagine all the intellect, a lifetime of storing in the intellect. You lose it, but everything you've gained in intelligence stays with you. because that came consciously. So all your intelligence goes with you, but your intellect, sorry, we need a new brain in the next body.
Yeah.
But intelligence is not stored in the brain. Intelligence is universal energy.
Okay, I'm just going to adjust this pen a little bit more. Bring it up a little bit higher. And when can you tell me when, oh, get out of there, fly.
It'd be like a monster looking.
Yeah. When I'm this close, can you see in that lens, am I in that shot at all?
No.
Just so about here, and about when do I come in?
Yeah, you're in.
There now, so about there. Okay. All right. Okay, good. So, okay, so just going back to, I'm working at trying to understand this space that I go into with the toad medicine, and
can you accept it without trying to analyse it and understand it?
I guess I recognise there's a scientific side of me that wants to sort of try and understand
Fair
it.
enough.
That's the left brain side.
Fair enough. I mean, but it's only so far that can take you, and the conclusion you come from will probably be incorrect.
Yeah.
The conclusion you reach, because once you reach a conclusion, you shut the door, and unfortunately, you stay on the wrong side of the door. Get it?
Yeah.
It's in everything in life.
Yeah, I recognise there's the left brain side of me that's wanting to understand
And
something.
that's okay.
Which
We
is,
can go with that. I'm not criticising that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's going to be a limit.
Yeah.
Because that's the way it is.
Yeah.
It's like that story I told of George Washington Carver, staring at a flower the whole afternoon. And the student comes along and says, "Sir, you've been about 4 hours staring at this flower. You've got to come in, it's getting chilly, but how can you stare for 4 hours at a flower?" And George Washington Carver looks up at him and smiles and says, "Son, you see a flower, I see the universe." How do you explain that? That's a different state of consciousness it's looking. But he was a genius. But he was a genius who was earthed and grounded and he knew of his metaphysical self. So the metaphysical him saw the universe. His eyes were looking at the flower. But it's like when you go into your metaphysical body, by habit you take a two-eye focus, because that's what we're used to physically. But once you're metaphysical, the two-eye focus will stay with you, but you can see you've got 360-degree view. You can see above, below, all around. But then that's perceptual. And so you then begin to develop your perceptual abilities, of which we have far more than we use. And yet your two-eye focus is there, but you're not looking through two physical eyes.
So
let me say one other thing. The metaphysical body is not a blob of light. The metaphysical body is actually of a greater complexity than the physical body. There's more to it than the physical body. The physical body is a poor physical version of what the metaphysical body holds, its capabilities. It's an incredibly fine and amazing instrument, but we just see it as light. But the complexity and the ability of the metaphysical body is absolutely astonishing. It leaves the physical body as though the physical body is cast in a suit of armour, and that's it. That's how handicapped it is compared to the physical, metaphysical.
What was the question I was going to ask? Okay, when you go into a metaphysical state, do you go in there with an intention to achieve a certain result?
I do both. I'm never looking for a result. Never. I never have a want with me. I don't ever take want, because want doesn't work. If you want, then you're not going to go very far. And so I'm completely open. Sometimes I have a focus. For instance, I've quite a number of times set off with the intent of going into Uluru and exploring it from an inner world and going down into it. Each time it spits me out. This year I went to Uluru for the first time ever, and in December, and January, early January, the temperature was 45 in the shade. The physical didn't really like that. Like God knows what it was in the sun. And but Uluru for me was sleeping. I was like a swirling vortex in Uluru, about a third the size of the rock, and the rock is magnificent. I mean, you look at it and you think, oh my God, it's incredible, changing colours, but the energy is quiescent, it's quiet. When I went to Katachuta, Katachuta is absolutely awake. Now, I had the idea that Uluru would be part of the earth changes. It won't come active now, I feel, until after the earth changes. It'll have its energy then, maybe to help balance the next, the sixth cycle, the people of the sixth cycle. But Katachuta is going to be involved in this. So I have never been able to, even there, leaning against it, I couldn't get in it. But it's not receptive, it's not open, it's sleeping, as it were. And so I could then begin to grasp why it spat me out every time. Katachuta welcomed me, and it knows perfectly well I'll be going back there metaphysically when I feel the timing is right. So we're the timing of everything in our lives, but in nature the timing is dictated by seasons and by drought or by floods and all that. But for human, we choose our timing. But we don't choose, okay, I'll go now. We choose the moment. When the moment arrives, then our growth recognizes the moment. Okay, it's time to connect. So I don't create that time, but the way I live my life, the more aware and conscious and focused I am, the more that timing will move along rapidly to the moment that is correct for both Katachuta and me.
Okay, so a question that comes out of that is...
I do invoke questions, don't I?
Yeah. When you mention the sixth cycle, do you have any desire or calling to go into the metaphysical world and attempt to affect the way this sixth cycle plays out?
None whatsoever.
Okay. So you don't have any sort of attachment to any outcome of the sixth cycle?
No attachment to any outcome, not of this body or anything. I have no attachment. When my late wife died, I was so attached, I was shocked, seriously shocked, and I've been very honest. I've shared it and I wrote it in my books, the degree of my attachment. But when I finally, a year later, let her go, I let go all my attachments. I just let them go. So Carolyn, I absolutely love and adore unconditionally, but I do not have emotional attachments to her. I feel very emotional about her, but I do not have that low energy attachment to her. There's an incredible freedom in being in a relationship where you can love them and they're in your life, but you don't have an attachment. You're not attached to them because fear is attaching.
So you travel around the world sharing this information.
10 or 12 countries each year.
Yeah, so why do you do that if there isn't some sort of attachment to educating people to create a better world?
That's easily answered.
Okay.
Years ago, I decided I wasn't going to do that. I mean, everything's perfect. I'm serious, everything is perfect, even though our brain judges it to be imperfect, even though everybody says nobody's perfect. They're wrong, everything is perfect, because God created perfectly. We did the rest. And so, but we'll leave that. I don't want to get into a long discussion on that. And so one time I was living with this, there's nothing I have to say, there's nothing I have to do. I was aware of my enlightenment and I don't, there's nothing I need to do. And then I met a little being. The being was in the form of a child. And the being said to me, because I said, it said you're not very active. I said, well, everything's perfect, I don't need to be. And it smiled and said, what would happen if there were no insects, pollinating insects on the planet? What would happen? I said, how do you mean? It said, well, what would happen to the flowers? I said, that's an interesting one. After a while, there wouldn't be any flowers because they need to be pollinated. And so the little being said, would that be perfect? I said, okay, I get your point. The point was, yes, it would be perfect, but I like flowers. And so I decided, therefore, I would share, in my experience of universal truth, I would share that with people, because as a rose opens and shares its fragrance, it shares its fragrance. you determine whether you're going to smell it. I mean, I spent once at a big rose garden in Baden-Baden in Germany. A friend and I, we spent 2 hours smelling roses. People staring at us, they thought we'd gone mad. By the end of 2 hours, we were so dizzy we could hardly stand up, probably the extra oxygen. But I had had a relationship with roses, and this was new to him. He was ecstatic about it. And so I'd experienced the fragrance of every rose. I chose to. And I only found one type of rose that I didn't like the fragrance at all. And so I choose, because as a person becomes enlightened, and enlightenment, as you know, for me, is a holistic process. It involves the soul, the spiritual energy, and the emotional energy. They all come together into one holistic enlightenment, unlike some gurus you can see who are emotional children, but spiritually powerhouses. They have to come and redress that and balance it. The emotion goes with us, 6th dimension, 7th dimension. Our emotions become the most, one of the most amazing languages among all creatures. Our emotions are unique throughout every beings I've met. I've never met anything like our emotions. They're unique to us and should be treasured. All we do is control them. It doesn't work. Anyway, where was I? I was heading in a different direction.
Well, I guess I was questioning if everything is perfect.
Okay.
You know, what's the point of sharing information and being active?
When a rose opens, it shares its fragrance. When a human being opens through enlightenment and unconditional love, they share their fragrance. Their fragrance happens to be, as close as they can express it through themselves, universal love, the universal truth. And so it is a natural thing for me to do, to go and share my truth, my love with humanity. It's a natural expression. And to not do that would be a conscious denial of sharing my thing in words and in writing. Now, as I already said, it would be shared on the level, I don't need to say or write anything, it would be shared on the level that is in humanity, but humanity also needs the stimulant that we get in conversation, exactly like now. People will not watch this, and it will stimulate their growth. And so I choose to go out, and it's my passion and my joy. So why would I not? If I said, I think maybe Migaloo is your passion and your joy and your journey, so we're doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have to say the difference is, and I honour you in this, you're doing your best to save whales and dolphins. I'm not doing anything to save any human being, because I know they can't be lost, they can't die. They're an immortal being, but I do my best to give them a glimpse of their potential.
Yeah, so I agree with you on that level where you know, of not being attached to life or death. I guess I see an opportunity there for people to choose the path that causes less suffering for others.
Absolutely, so do I. In what I teach, I tell people choose the path of love. You know me, choose love. I mean, every Michael's Musings on the Facebook is I'm all about choose love, and that does the least suffering to every creature and every animal on the planet.
Yeah. Okay.
And every human.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess it gets back to choosing love, doesn't it?
Do you know, it really does. It really does, and it can only be a conscious choice.
Yeah.
I won't go into this, but you cannot subconsciously experience unconditional love. That's a scary statement. 94% of humanity lives subconsciously. You cannot experience unconditional love subconsciously. We have a human level of love, and well above that there is unconditional love, which is a completely different expression. And you can't discuss it because it's beyond the intellect. The intellect can't experience it. So how can you discuss it? Because the intellect can never experience it.
Okay. So something that I feel a lot from the whales is that they seem to be in this vibration of unconditional love. You know, I guess there's probably other beings like that as well, but I feel it really strongly.
Also, you've got to realise that unconditional love is not human. It is a state of beingness, and humans can experience it, but it isn't theirs. Whales know this. So you're right, you can feel it from whales, but that isn't a human expression, that is the whale's expression, but it's exactly the same unconditional love, because unconditional love is not confined to humanity only. It means it love with no conditions.
It's funny, also quite often I'll hear your words, consciously choose love, whenever I'm deviating off that path.
Wonderful. See, it works what I'm doing.
Yeah, it is.
That's great.
Yeah, and I think it's a great mantra for, you know, everyone to follow. Is
and I even put consciously in capital letters every time, because it's always about conscious, being conscious. You can't choose love subconsciously.
Yeah. So as the mantra for humanity at this moment, in non-attachment of an outcome, but just to bring in the the potentiality of our existence, consciously choose love.
That expression includes all life, everything. It's when you take all the fluff and all the words away, you're left with consciously choose love. In every moment, suddenly you're being confronted by an aggressive person. You smile at them, and by consciously choosing love, you don't say, I consciously choose love. You just smile at them, you're not affected by them, you say, have a good day, and you walk away. One day, maybe a week later, that person thinks, wow, I was so aggressive with that person, they just smiled at me and said, have a good day. That could be the seed of change that will change their life. Whereas if you go back to them with the same energy, and you come back with your smart report, they feel completely justified in everything they said. And so consciously choosing love is a conscious and powerful movement in your own consciousness. Every time you consciously choose love, you are part of the evolution of consciousness. You have grown in that moment, every time.
And humanity, as we're all a reflection of humanity has grown and evolved as well.
That will affect every life form on the planet, and particularly humanity. Now, mind you, they won't thank you for it, because they'll be completely unaware of it, but it's there. It's there. Does, well actually yes, so that doesn't work. I was going to say, does the earth know when you sow a seed, but yes it does, the whole earth. So that's not good. You know, most, like whales and animals on the higher scale of evolution are more conscious of wholeness than humans are. We're only conscious of separation, with exceptions of course. We're conscious of separation, but the earth is very aware of wholeness.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for talking with me today and sharing your experiences. And
it's been an absolute pleasure.